مشاهدينا
Hello.
الكرام أهلا بكم إلى برنامج
Hello and
حوار على
welcome to the
فرنسا
interview on
يتحدث.
France
ما
24.
هي النظرة
How
الأمريكية
does the US
لأبرز
view the
ملفات
latest
الساعة
current
في العالم
affairs in the
العربي؟
Arab world?
سؤال
We will
سيجيب
discuss this
عنه
with the
ضيفنا
US
من
Assistant
واشنطن
Secretary of Near
مساعد
Eastern
وزير
Affairs,
الخارجية
David
الأمريكية
Schenker.
لشؤون الشرق الأدنى ديفيد شينكر. أهلا بك
Welcome
سيد
to
شينكر.
France 24, Mr. Schenker.
Hello.
الملف الليبي في واجهة الأحداث.
Libya has been making headlines in the past few days. How do you view the situation in the country, considering the role of major foreign powers, such as Turkey and Russia, in escalating the war?
Listen, we have made it clear that we support an immediate ceasefire. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, spoke with the GNA Prime Minister Siraj on Friday. He expressed to him the need to return to negotiations as quickly as possible to accept a ceasefire. So we believe that that the GNA is demonstrating some flexibility, but not so for the LNA and Hiftar. We are concerned about the proxy fighting, but this is not just a proxy war between the Turks and the Russians and their mercenaries. This is a regional conflict with Egypt and the United Arab Emirates and also the French involved. And so we think it's important that the arms embargo be implemented immediately and that all sides move toward a de-escalation that would allow a pause so we can get negotiations started. And so we could provide a humanitarian ceasefire to try and look after the people who have COVID in Libya.
Does the US intend to put forward a plan aimed at ending the crisis over there?
We have adopted the Berlin plan. We participated in the conference several months back. We agreed with Chancellor Merkel, but also Erdogan, Putin, Boris Johnson. Everybody was there and agreed, among other things, including Sisi of Egypt, that that we would move toward a ceasefire, that we would encourage all sides to go to the 5+5 military talks, and we're just not seeing this being implemented. But we are engaged and increasingly concerned as well about the latest reports of advanced Russian fighter jets arriving in the country. This is a big escalation, and we're really concerned about the suffering of the Libyan people. It's time for this war to stop.
What is the US doing in order to help the Libyan people?
Well, we are sending funding for COVID relief, but we are also engaging politically. That means necessarily talking to all sides, doing diplomacy throughout the region, and getting the backers, those parties who are involved in the conflict, to try and rein in their allies on the ground.
We have mentioned the Russian and Turkish role in the Libyan crisis. Is the US in contact with either of these two powers in order to end the conflict on the ground?
Yeah, we have our diplomatic engagements with them. It's difficult, as you can imagine. Both sides are committed to this endeavor. But I'm not going to comment on the substance of our diplomatic engagements with them.
Are we facing a Syrian scenario in Libya?
I think we're seeing it already. Yes, it has become a larger regional conflict with similar dynamics playing out in Libya, to be sure. What we haven't seen there is the murder of nearly 550,000 innocent civilians by the Libyan government. I think that's a primary difference. What the Assad regime and the Russians have done in Syria resembles a genocide. So we haven't seen the sort of suffering on that mass level yet, but this could spin out of control if the Russians choose to escalate further.
إذا انتقلنا إلى العراق سيد
What
شنكر،
are the reasons,
لماذا
in your opinion,
تفسرون
behind the ongoing
استمرار
political
الأزمة
crisis and
السياسية
security threat in Iraq?
القائمة في هذا البلد؟
Well, listen, I think that you have a new government there. Certainly, all the cabinet seats have not been apportioned yet, but Prime Minister Khatami seems to be an Iraqi nationalist who is devoted to demonstrating and expressing Iraqi sovereignty. He doesn't want his state to be a tool of Iran. He wants Iraqis to make their own decisions. He also, and we'll see going forward, whether he's able to succeed in actually demonstrating Iraqi sovereignty. But I think he's got enormous challenges in front of him. Some of those are on the security side, but some of them certainly with oil at something like $18 a barrel is greatly impacting Iraq's economy, which is already in pretty bad shape before the COVID hit.
How do you view the future relationship between Washington and al-Qadhimi's government?
We are optimistic. The secretary has spoken with Prime Minister Khatami a number of times. So, I met him during my last trip to Iraq before the COVID hit. We are optimistic about the direction forward. We have next month the beginning of the strategic dialogue between the United States and Iraq, where we will discuss a broad range of topics, including our economic relationship, our political relationship, and the disposition of U.S. forces in Iraq. And we're looking forward to that. I think Prime Minister Khatami recognizes the value of the relationship with the United States, and so we're looking forward to working with him.
Even with the Iranian presence?
Nobody is asking for the Iranians to be thrown out of Iraq. What we expect is that Iran will behave like a normal state. And that means that Iran will not establish militias or terrorist organizations in neighboring countries or foreign countries that operate outside the control of the central government, that it will not, as a matter of policy, work to destabilize neighboring governments or governments in the Arab world. And so I think Prime Minister Khatami would look forward to Iran becoming a normal state too.
Mr. Schenker, is the withdrawal of American troops from Iraq an option at this moment?
We are going to discuss a broad range of topics with the Iraqi government, including the disposition of U.S. forces.
Moving to Lebanon now, how do you view the current Lebanese government, and is the U.S. willing to offer financial aid to Lebanon as long as this government remains in place?
We are still waiting to see whether this government is truly committed to reform, whether it will move forward and implement these reforms, not just legislate them or announce them, but to actually implement them. And then we'll see where we stand on the IMF support. Clearly, Lebanon is in need of an IMF program. We are pleased to see that the Lebanese government recognizes that. And we'll see if they're actually willing to do what it takes to implement reform. The reform is a difficult thing. And I think it's essential to point out that Hezbollah, which is part of this government, is not an organization known for supporting reform. They thrive on corruption.
Can we expect new American sanctions against political figures linked to parties considered close to the government?
Yes, it's quite possible. In fact, we're looking forward to that. These are the allies of Hezbollah, or people that have, with the Caesar bill next door, people that have aided and abetted the murdering of hundreds of thousands of Syrians, whether they be in Lebanon or in Syria, would be subject to sanction. There's a broad range of sanctions that we are always looking into, and hopefully we'll be able to roll some out soon.
Just one question, if you may, about the deal of the century. Russia is currently working on a mediation in order to renew dialogue between Washington and the Palestinians with regards to what is known as the deal of the century. How do you consider the Russian role to be?
Well, generally, we don't view Russia as being a very productive part of the conversation on many issues in the region, and I think that when it comes to being a mediator between Israelis and Palestinians, that same thing is true. But if Russia wants to have a voice, if they somehow can play a productive role, we shall see. But above all, we think it would be important and productive for the Palestinians to start engaging again. We understand that they are not enthusiastic about President Trump's the administration's vision for peace. If they don't like it, why don't they come and talk to us, talk to the Israelis, and let's have a discussion about the way forward. I think that would be really productive. The Palestinians have agency, and so they should be involved and have a say about their destiny.
But the Palestinians have rejected the deal. And some consider this to be the end of the Palestinian dream of having a state.
We understand, as I said, that the Palestinians are not enthusiastic about the plan, about the vision. As Social Advisor Kushner has said, this was a starting point for dialogue, and something that would be useful to talk about and how we move forward. And so the Palestinians, as you saw in this vision, will have a state. That's what it says in there. So I would hope they engage. That's the most important thing at this point.
U.S. Assistant Secretary of Near Eastern Affairs David Schenker, thank you, and thank you for watching. Please stay with us on France 24. Goodbye.
As a field reporter, you really get a sense of just how important it is to be able to go and check out things for yourselves on the ground. One example which stays in my mind is when I went up to northeastern Nigeria with my colleague Jonathan Walsh, and we wanted to do a report about the impact the Islamist group Boko Haram had left on the communities there. And we were being told by the Nigerian army for months that they had won the ground war, that the militants no longer posed a threat. And as soon as we were in the zone for ourselves, we could see that that was just clearly not the case. There were some roads that our local fixer, our producer, was absolutely terrified to take for fear of being kidnapped. We were flown out to enclaves of land by the UN by helicopter because we couldn't drive there. People were too afraid to go back to their homes a kilometre away because there was still fighting going on. And we even located one active Boko Haram member living in a refugee camp who told us he was still in regular contact with fighters out in the woods. So that really highlighted for me how important it is to go and see for yourselves what's happening and not believe what's in official statement, press releases or communiques.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.